Okay.
All right, welcome everybody to Saturdays with Tara. I'm Mary Beth, and you are at the Law of Attraction Club on the web at theloaclub.com. With me is Robin, and he'll be bringing through Tara for us this morning. And I just wanted to remind you that if you are on the live broadcast, when the time comes, you can unmute yourself to ask a question or make a comment. And if you would like to type in the group chat, you may do that as well. It's over to the right of your screen. Okay, Robin and Tara, over to you and welcome.
Welcome to you all. It feels like to this one that he is sort of embracing you in a non-physical sense. And the reason it feels that way to him is that is the way it feels like to us. And we enjoy that feeling immensely because, you see, we are here to answer your questions. That is our passion, if you like. That is our interest. That is our goal. That is our desire. That is our intent. And we have always said that we are here because you have summoned us, which is another way of saying that we are here in your world, intersecting with you because you have attracted this thing that is us. You have shaped us out of the clay of all that is, and we have appeared like your genie in the bottle. And what may be not quite so obvious to you, certainly it was not quite so obvious to this one until he was forced to think about it, is that we have also created you, you see. You are part of our game, and that is the nature of the law of attraction. That is the nature of all that is. And so today we're going to talk of many things. And this one and Mary Beth were engaged in a little chat before this session, and it is brought to mind that there's a difference, of course, between Tara, as you have come to know us by name through this one, and a difference between Tara, as you've come to know us by name through Mary Beth or Rachel or any of you, for you are all able to channel us. But when we say that, we are also saying to you it will be slightly different because we will be intersecting with you, and it will be a collaboration between you and us, even as this is a collaboration between us and this one. And we are using the toolbox, if you like, that is available to us both here. And that toolbox is some of the things that we bring to the party and some of the things that this one brings to the party. And so there will be on occasions what you might perceive as differences between some of the things that we say. And that is for two reasons. The first is that we are trying to describe in a language, in a finite language, based in a physical time world, that which is obviously non-physical and non-time based. And so at the very best, these are going to be approximations to the nature of things, but not so bad approximations, we feel. Not so bad that you cannot understand who you are and what is going on here. Not so bad that you cannot come to an understanding of the way it all works. But there are always going to be some, if you like, limits to the metaphor and limits to the language. And other differences also occur, of course, because there are different interests and aspirations of you consciousness known as humans that are engaged in this exercise also. And we head in today to the topic of contrast. And we were talking of this earlier in the week. And today's discussion, if you like, will move from that point to a new place, and a more nuanced place, and it will be, if you like, some differences, but not really. And so as always with these things, we encourage you to make your own judgments about all of this. It is your world and it is your decision. And we always say to everybody, take what feels good, leave what does not. Take what feels good, discard the rest. You will know from what is in your heart and whether the bells are ringing, whether this makes sense for you. And if it does, then embrace it. Otherwise, sift through it and see what works for you. That is our advice to you all. Once again today, of course, we will be talking from a space-time perspective. And we always feel a little bit hesitant about doing that, because if we talk about the world being a certain way, it tends to reinforce that this is an absolute, that this is a fixture in your life, in your existence. And it is not. It's an illusion. It is your creation. It is a marvelous creation, of course, but it is not a fixture. It is not absolute. And the only reason we talk in space-time terminology is that you are so engaged in this world that using that sort of language and terminology is the easiest and quickest way for us to convey that which we are trying to get across. And so we put our disclaimer on all of that up front here by saying we will not, through this conversation, be always saying, in this one's world, this is this way, and yours may vary. But we want you to take that as a given, that your world is by definition your world. And while there may be an enormous number of what you perceive as identical things going on in that world to this one, it is still your world. And nobody can tell you anything about it that you do not already know. All we are talking about here is that which is beyond it and that which you might aspire towards in order to make your journey here, your adventure here, a little more fun. We would also say that if you really want to obtain, we were going to say obtain some benefit, but that does not feel like the right words. If you really want to get to the place where some of this stuff starts to become part of who you are, then we encourage you to take full advantage of these moments here and allow yourself to immerse yourself in the pictures and the ideas that are here and see those pictures, and are they a match to you? Are they a match to who you are? And allow yourself to get to the place of making some decisions here, because it's all about choice, you see. This is all about choice. And so we want to talk here today also a little about reaching for the stars. We've called it your birthright, and that is in a sense true. We want you to get to the place in this subject of contrast where you are hovering around a different part of the contrast spectrum. And so we will talk some more about that. We want to talk about you remembering why you chose to come into this space-time existence. We want to talk about not settling, refusing to settle for less than you want, for less than a brilliant, exciting world. And in all of that, let's truly understand what contrast is, because contrast is not shorthand for something bad or unwanted. Contrast means the difference between a feel-good place and a feel-not-so-good place. And we'll talk some more about that, of course. This one, and we have constructed what we call an emotional guidance scale. And the words that are on this scale are the ones we have picked at random to represent the different levels here. And so it is that your words on this scale may be different. Your words on this scale may be different than the ones that are on this chart here. But let's talk about these are representative, and you will have your own words and your own levels, of course. At the top is ecstasy. We've called it a 10. Next is joy or passion. Next is fun or excitement. Next is peace or calmness. And next is an okay place. It's sort of, I'm in control. I'm content. I'm just doing my thing here. And it may be that you're in this place, you don't notice anything really in terms of good or bad feelings. And then we cross the line, the divide between the feeling good stuff and the feeling not so good stuff. And we move to that place maybe of vague unease or slight tension or too much to do, too many must-dos or whatever. And then next down would be perhaps boredom or nervousness. And then there's dread or anger and fear. And then there's hopelessness or being overwhelmed. And then there's utter deep despair and paralysis. You can do nothing. You have shut down almost to the point of not existing. And so we would say, as we said, that you may have your own words about this. We're going to come back to this chart, this scale here, because we wish to have you understand the degree to which your emotions are telling you things. The way you feel is important. So, as you were growing up, how many times were you told you have to be realistic, you have to face reality? And who told you those words? Perhaps your parents mostly, or your teachers, or people that were grown-ups in your world. And what did they mean by that? You cannot expect to have it all. You just can't run around demanding everything that you want. In this world, there are limits. You all have limited options. And you need to understand what those are. You need to understand what these options are so that you don't get disappointed. You'll be happier once you accept what lies within the realms of possibility and what does not lie within the realms of possibility. You have to face reality. So think back to those times when you heard that. Do you remember the disappointment you felt upon first hearing that there were limits in your world and first coming to recognize that there were limits in your world? And then what happened? For many of you, as you heard them over and over, you chose to believe them. After all, the people telling you these things, they knew everything, didn't they? Your parents, they knew everything, whereas you keep asking questions because they have the answers. And so it's perhaps natural, normal, that you chose to believe them. Now you may have interpreted that, as many of you do, as you make those choices, you may have interpreted that as learning how things really are, but we promise you those are not how things really are. Those were choices of beliefs. And as you chose to believe them, so the world conforms. As you begin the process of tamping down your desires, reining them in, and right along with them, of course, your imagination closes down also. Because what's the fun of imagining things that can never be? I mean, imagining is fun when you have no limits, because you can see the possibility that it's going to manifest. You don't think about that. You just know in a limitless world that imagining is fun. And then you discover that there are some limits, supposedly. And so your imagination starts to close down too. It's not that as an adult you have no imagination. You do. You have imagination. It's just that you have, over this time, closed it down. And part of our message to you is, of course, open it up. In that process, you became a stranger to the big dreams because you couldn't step into those dreams anymore without feeling uncomfortable. And much of what we talk about here is dreaming big dreams again, of allowing yourself to get back to that imagination you had when you knew the world was without limit. Can you see the truth of all of this? Can you feel that place? Can you feel what it was like to be in that place? And can you feel what it would be like to be back in that place again? And as you made those decisions about choices, you put yourself firmly on the road to everything that was unspectacular and ordinary. You went to school, your training camp for the job where many of you spend most of your waking life, doing something you do not want to do. Think about that. In this one's world, there was an industrial revolution back at the beginning of the last century, and schools were invented to train people to work. And that is what schools remain today in this one's world, training you to do something sensible, so you can earn a living. And as you do that, the world looks on approvingly. You are doing the right thing, the practical thing, with a steady good job and a good career. So then you progress to safer and safer options, do you not? You choose to close down the big ideas and progress to that which is safe. In other words, you move to less contrast. And so if you are one of those who is obsessed with reality, and by the way, you all are to some extent, you are condemning yourself to more of it. You've heard us say the better it gets, the better it gets. And it does. You may have noticed the opposite, that the worse it gets, the worse it gets. And why is that? Because this focus on reality brings the vibration of what you're currently experiencing into your own vibrational attraction point. And by law of attraction, that brings more and more of the same stuff into your experience. Can you see that? The better it gets, the better it gets, because it's looking good and I'm feeling good. And in this place, you create more that's good. And then, boom, you step in a hole and now you're feeling bad. And then you focus on that which is bad. And if you're focusing on the fact that there are limits, that you can't have it all, that maybe it's time to go out and get that steady job, that unless you pull yourself together here, you're heading for a bad fall, what are you now including in your vibration? It's scarcity and a whole stack of must-dos. It has to be that, because the truth of this is that you are telling the universe over and over, less please. That's your vibrational set point. So focusing on reality is a great idea if reality feels good. But when people say you have to face reality, what are they saying? They mean settle for less. Settle for what's quote-unquote real. Settle for practical limitations in your world. So then our question for you becomes, how's that working out for you? Have you found that even being realistic didn't shield you from bumps in the road? From where we sit here in our exalted place, we see that as you throttle back your desires, you lessen your choices, and as you lessen your choices, you lessen your excitement. As you lessen your excitement, you lessen the ability to make big decisions and the focus and energy that goes along with those decisions. You start down that path and end up with nothing to create and no reason to be alive in this space-time existence, to be here at all. What does a fish know about water? And the answer is, a fish knows nothing about water until it leaves it. When you were young and small, what did you know about air? We would say until you went to school and studied what air was, but you knew very little about air. You knew that sometimes if it moved, you called it a wind, and sometimes it would be warm and cold, but you probably interpreted that as just being it's cold or it's warm. And so you knew nothing about air, perhaps until you stepped into water for the first time. Until you stepped into water that was deeper than you were tall, and discovered that this thing called air is very different than this other stuff. And now you start to know more about air, do you not? And that's, of course, in exactly the same way as a fish knows nothing about water until it leaves it. And so, like the fish, some of you have been hanging out at lower levels of vibration, at lower points on this emotional guidance scale for so long that it's become normal. It's like water to you. It's the status quo. And in that place, when you hit a bump in the road, when you manifest something unwanted, sometimes you find yourself shutting down even further with what seems like no way to slow the rate of descent. So here's the question. What is your status quo? Have you been hanging out at a level 5 or less? Ask yourself right here and now, in this space of this call, this hangout together here, where are you hanging out now? Where have you been hanging out? Do you feel powerless to change course? Because that's the whole point of this discussion, isn't it? Changing course. It's always a question of where you put your focus. As with everything about your world, it's a choice. So let's talk a little about making a new choice, a different choice than you made way back when, a choice that can change your life. This year, this month, this day, this minute. Now is an excellent time to start. So what about this facing reality stuff? Facing it, focusing on it, means thinking of it as real and unchangeable. It means being obsessed with it to the point of forgetting who you are. Think about it. Knowing who you are, a part of God. Does forgetting the truth of that sound sensible to you? Facing reality is about the dumbest advice on the planet, and we've heard a lot of dumb advice on that planet of yours. We were talking earlier about the fact that so much of what we say here is politically incorrect. It makes no sense if you are based in a physical world, if you have made the decision that the world is fixed. But we know that is not the case, and we are encouraging you into that belief and understanding. So, here's an alternative. Maintain perspective. Be an observer. not of that so-called reality, but go sit on the moon and contemplate your world and your life. Another metaphor, be in the stands as well as on the field playing the game. We've encouraged you to this position many times. Ask yourself, why are you here? And here's the truth of it. No matter what story you've invented, and no matter where you find yourself in that story, the fundamental reason you all come into this world is to experience the joy of creating in this life on earth environment. You are here to create in this special place, in this special way. And there's no higher purpose than that. There can be no higher purpose than that, because it means doing what you eagerly came here to do, to mix it up with all of those other consciousnesses, those other things out there that look like people, to mix it up, make new decisions, and experience new things. We suggest to you, we encourage you, we want you to maintain an awareness of who you are and hold that perspective, so that unwanted experiences do not shut you down. Stay away from that cycle of the worse it gets, the worse it gets. Then you will thrive no matter what the circumstances are. So let's look back now at this emotional guidance scale again. When was the last time you hang out at a 9 or 10? Be honest with yourself here. Doesn't the thought of being passionate about your life start to take you back to that place where you knew it was all possible? Can you not feel that yearning inside of you? We promise you that the sky is within your reach. The sky is within your reach. There will always be contrast, but how about choosing to hang out in the 5 to 10 range instead of the 1 to 6 range? You see, contrast is just a difference. And without a difference, there is no way of appreciating that which is better from which is worse. And that is the nature of individuation. We experience contrast. We do not go from what you might consider a 10 to a 1 on this scale. Ours is perhaps indiscernible in terms of this scale to you, or would be to you, if we could convey the essence of what it is that we feel. But we feel it and we move. We feel it and we move. And all we are suggesting to you is to see contrast here for what it is. To see it that you are the master of it, not the slave of it. It is a tool for you. It is a tool for you to say, this is not what I want. It is a tool for you to ignite that rocket of desire and say, this is what I want. This gives you, you see, a perspective. This gets you out of the water and into the air, or out of the air and into the water, to see the difference. This gives you a frame of reference within which to say, this is what I now want, this is what I now want, and this is what I now want. We want you to hang out in that, in the top end of that scale. We want your worst contrast to be a 6. You might drop to a 5. And if you drop to a 5, that's a real call to say, where am I and where do I want to be? But we promise you, you can move to that upper end of this scale. And can you not feel that inside of you? It is the opposite to that feeling you had when someone said there are limits and you were forced to believe it. And your world started to shut down from that point. It is the freeing up of yourself from that place and that decision. And you can feel it inside of you. We know you can if you will allow it. We know you can step back into that place of imagining and being and imagining and being, and thereby creating it. And so the practical rubber meets the road advice here, discussion here, what we would encourage you into here is see contrast for what it is. It's an awareness. We've often used that word here, that word to describe that place of understanding, that place of perspective, that place of being the observer, that place of sitting on the moon, if you like a more concrete example of being in the stands here. That place of seeing the game at the same time as you are participating in the game, and not letting this physical world, this so-called real world, mesmerize you to the point of taking you away from that place. Yes, we want you to be in the game. You want to be in the game. That is why you are here. You are here to experience the joy of creating in this environment. And you cannot do that while you allow yourself to be taken down. So it is a choice. It's a choice to move to a new place. It's a choice to move to a new awareness. It's a choice to set a decision here that says, from this point forward, in my creative existence here in this space-time reality I have eagerly chosen to be in, from this point forward, I'm going to approach it a little differently. I'm going to see it for what it is. I'm going to see contrast for what it is. It's a signpost. It says, over here is the stuff that you want. Oh, okay. So I'm going to now head in that direction. And that is the purpose of that signpost, to head you in that direction. So there we are. We've talked to you here about this emotional guidance scale. We've talked to you about understanding where you are on it and not settling for that second best, not settling for third best, not settling for fourth best, settling for the idea that you can have it all, to once and forever retake your place in the knowledge of who you are, to step once more back into that imagination of a 3-year-old, step once more back into the power of who you are. And so there we have it. And of course, we welcome your questions and your comments if you have any.
So please remember to unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment. You can also type it in the group chat. So I don't have anything remarkable to say at this moment or a great question, Tara, but I just love thinking about the imagination, especially since I have these 2 little grandchildren, a 2-year-old and an almost 1-year-old. And the 2-year-old, his imagination is enormous. I mean, it's just constant. And he has been doing things like he'll hold out his little hand. I don't know where he got this from, but he holds out his little hand and he goes, I need some monies. And so he's expecting somebody to put some coins in his hand, okay? And we asked him what he wanted the monies for, and he said, well, my son, his uncle, has a Ducati, a motorcycle, and he's seen pictures of it. So one of his little red bikes he calls a Ducati. So anyway, he said he needed the monies to buy one dog a Ducati, and then another dog a Ducati, and then the cat a Ducati. I mean, he was just naming all of these creatures and things he was going to buy a Ducati for, and it seems so funny, but it just goes to show how, you know, he really believes he's going to do these things. And I'm almost envious because I want to have that kind of imagination again and really believe it. That's what's so wonderful. He really believes it, you know.
Of course.
Yeah.
And you see, Mary Beth, you are creating him, are you not?
Of course.
And so he is your teacher that you are creating.
Absolutely.
Yes. And he is playing a role in your world as you have wanted him, believed he could, expected he could, and it is a wonderful role.
Yes.
And these examples you are giving are perfect examples of that which we're talking about. You see, if you really can have it all, imagine that. What if you could buy a Ducati for your cat and your cat could ride the Ducati? Would that not be a fun world?
That's hysterical.
And we promise you that world exists. It might be a small Ducati, or it might be a big cat. But that either way, that world exists. If you can imagine it, and obviously you can because your grandson is,
Right.
then that world exists. Anything you can imagine exists in one version. And of course, you've got so clever, have you not, about picking out that which is real from that which is fantasy.
Mm.
And we seek to do some damage to the border between those two.
Right.
Because there is no border between those two. There is only what you choose to believe and expect and what you choose to think about and think, well, that's not possible. And that is your creation, is it not? But we enjoy vicariously your enjoyment of your grandson because that you perceive in him is in fact that which we are encouraging you into. We are encouraging you to the place of stepping beyond reality.
Yeah.
Perhaps not to cats with Ducatis, but then that is his choice and yours will be different. But not limited by any more or less than his.
Yeah, and it really, when I'm with him and I hear all these things he comes up with, and of course it's so much fun to play in that world with him and encourage it. I think about things that come up for me that I was told I couldn't do, that this is impossible. And those kinds of things that have colored and still do in the background a bit here and there, colored my belief that I can do this or that, and limit, and I've allowed myself to use that as a limit. And so it's a reawakening my imagination, of course. Not that it's ever been gone, but it's reawakening it on new levels,
Absolutely. And right along with that, we hope is also the growing awareness that all this is possible.
That's the point, yes.
The boundaries move, yes, exactly.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
Nishiri.
I often experience that I'm feeling several things at the same time, or that something like these different parts of me are feeling different things, or something like at the same time that I'm feeling mostly calm, there'll be something in me that's feeling dread or anxiety. And I'm wondering what these different, and a lot of times they almost have personalities, these different parts. And I would like to know more about what they are exactly.
So initially we have just diagnosed you with multiple personality disorder and schizophrenia.
Yes, and my experience is that almost everyone has it.
Yes. And so we can answer this on two levels, Nishri. One level is that these are parts of you. These are the way you are approaching the world. And we would encourage you that if you are perceiving things like from different aspects within the one consciousness, that this can be a fun thing to do and a fun place to be, but just to remember that you're the one in charge. And the second level we would come at this question of yours is, of course, that in all of this, the nature of who you are and the nature of these apparent different consciousnesses are also part of what you are creating, what you have come to expect of yourself. And so when you say, what are these things that I have here, and how is it that they act in this way, we would say, well, to some extent you must tell us, because you have chosen to be the way you are. And you say, but that's not answering my question, that's not helpful. And we say, well, we would then say to you, what would you prefer to be? What do you want to be? You see, this is the question that's important in almost every conversation we have with any of you. What would you prefer? What do you want to be? Do you want to open up your consciousness to something like ours, where you transgress space and time, where you move to different worlds, different existences, different versions of you, and experience them all in what you might consider to be simultaneously? And we say you can do that, but you are stepping well beyond the bounds of the game, and that may not be the choice that you're fundamentally seeking to make. But we quote that example to you, or we give you that example to show you that it is all within your power to control here, you see. And so when you ask a question about yourself and the way you are perceiving consciously different aspects of you, that is the Nursery version of the way things are in Nursery's world for Nursery. And we would say to you, is it fun to be in that place? And if it's fun to be in that place, play on. And if it is not fun to be in that place because of something, we say then you can choose something different. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, and then that sometimes there is momentum, and sometimes it's just simply making a mental choice is not going to overcome the momentum of having expectations, long-held expectations.
Indeed, you are, if you like, we're going to use this word, but we're using it recognizing that there's nothing really stuck about anything. But you are stuck with right now your current tapestry of expectations. Look around you. This is the world. How do you feel? This is you, all right? This is what you have created. And we agree with you that making a choice to change that does not necessarily instantly change everything, because you have that background tapestry that's there. And you must ask yourself, can I expect to change everything? And you've already said in this conversation, have you not, that I can't, that I cannot, it seems, by decision in the moment, change my circumstance in the moment. Well, we promise you, of course, that you can, but we recognize that this is what your current level of expectations is. And so, as always, you must start with the things that seem doable. You must start with the elements of that tapestry that you feel you can pick apart a little and replace. And then bit by bit, as we've always said, the better it gets, the better it gets. You discover that you have more and more power. And then you discover that it is possible to make a new decision now and change something now. But that takes a level of confidence in your ability to create that perhaps at this moment you are telling yourself you do not have. And that's okay.
But it's not the truth.
It's not the truth, exactly.
Not the truth. Your whole beingness is joy, and you get to be there. You just have to start believing that you can create that. It may take some
But I
work.
also don't think that we intended to say enjoy 24/7. Like having the different emotions and playing up and down the emotional scale is part of the fun.
Well, if that feels like fun to you, good. It doesn't feel like fun to me at this point. But that's your choice. That's your choice. To me, that's more of a concept, but that that it's fun to have all those emotions. I don't feel like it's fun not to feel good.
If you were
So go ahead, Tara.
if you were bouncing around between dread or anger as your top point and utter despair and paralysis as your low point, you would not describe yourself as having fun, misery. But if you are bouncing between ecstasy and peace and calmness, and that is your chosen range of contrast, then of course you might describe yourself as having fun. But even within that, let us say you have settled into a place where there is never anything but a 7 to a 10 for you. You're always up in those blissful realms here, or good feeling realms. Can you see that that then becomes your frame of reference? That then becomes your status quo. And then when you drop to a feeling like just sort of contentment, that feels not so good anymore because you miss the joy or the passion or the ecstasy. And so there was always going to be a range of contrast in your experience. That's the nature of who you are and we are. That's the nature of individuation. That is the nature of growth. That is the nature of that is the spark that creates, you see. And so it's always a matter of where you are now and where do you want to be. And it is the joy of making that new decision and reaching a new place and seeing not only the manifestation of that, the feeling of that, the joy of being in that place, but it's double the fun because you know that you chose it. You know that you are the one steering yourself to this place. And therefore you know you can steer yourself to the next place and the next place and the next place. So did that make sense?
Yes.
Good. It is your story, you see. We remind you of that all the time, but we want you to get a sense of that now, perhaps a renewed sense of that. That you are the one creating everything in your world. All of those things out there, those people, those cars, those trees, those plants, those animals, those countries, those governments, that calm day and that windy day, you are creating it all from that tapestry of expectations of yours. You. Just this consciousness that is you, Nijari. And you are the one that's creating this physical you and the good and the bad of that. You're the one that's creating this, if you like, the spaces of this consciousness of yours and the awareness levels that you have. You are the one creating all of that. So it is yours to play with. And we are just reminding you of that fact. And if it seems like you cannot change it all with the wave of your magic wand in an instant, that's okay. We just are here to remind you that you really do have the magic wand. And as you learn to use it, as you be like Harry Potter growing up and develop the skills to use this thing called your consciousness and your choices, then you get better and better at it. And of course we're just here, as we said, to encourage you to do that.
And just to add this little bit for you, I don't know if you, when you feel like you're feeling discomfort while you're feeling good and then the discomfort comes sort of back and forth, don't let it bug you too much or scare you too much or whatever you go into. It's not that big a deal. It's just a time to make a choice. How do you want to feel? That's all it is. And as Tara was saying, it may not be easy to step into feeling better more and more of the time, but you do have that choice, and you can get better at it if you want to. So you have a lot more power than you realize. You have huge power.
And when Mary Beth says don't let that happen, she means take the opportunity to step back from it, rise above it, sit on the moon, sit in the stands, whatever you want to, that feels as a metaphor for you. But allow yourself to see it in perspective of who you are. And that is a major way of overriding the presence of it, the enormity of it, the certainty of it. It's a way of putting it in, as we say, perspective. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think I could feel uncomfortable about feeling uncomfortable. I just see it as, okay, it's guidance and it's an indicator. I wasn't saying that I'm trying to get rid of those feelings. I'm just curious about this, why it feels like there's a separate entity or a separate something inside me. Like, is that a vibration? Is it a thought?
It's
Is
an
it a
old habit
belief?
of thought. That's all it is. It's an old habit of thought.
Indeed. Thanks, Nijri.
Thank you.
Sherry has asked a question.
Okay, Sherry. She says, when you move up the scale and live from joy or ecstasy, do you attract people at this level, or do you just see people differently? Good question.
Well, we could be smart here, Sherry, and say to you, you tell us because it's your world and you will create it as you expect it to be. But let us give you some ideas about what can be here. So as you move up the scale, naturally your world will conform to that. You will find less disagreeable people in your world. And you could say that is just seeing people differently in one sense, but in another sense, what you mean by seeing people differently is that you are creating them differently. And what we mean by that is that you are stepping into a world where there's a different version of those people. You see, this is the ultimate answer to those that want to save the world, or the ones that want to create world peace. And they strive to band together all those of like mind in order that they may be a force to be reckoned with, and therefore move the world in this direction or that direction, or move governments in this direction or that direction. And you see, that's a big task. And it's in a way, it's an impossible task, because the world that they are perceiving out there that needs fixing is their world. And the only way they can change that world is by changing what they are creating, by changing their expectations of it. And if they feel they need to fight to change the world, or they need to push for world peace, what they're doing in effect is reinforcing their idea of a world without peace, or reinforcing the idea of a world that needs saving. And so the world will always need saving. And so there will always be a need to stop wars and have peace. It all starts within you, you see. And so we would say to you, Sherry, what do you want to see in your world? What do you want to attract in your world? Do you want to live in a world which is at peace? We say you can. That world exists. Would you like to step into it? You can. You choose to expect to be in a world where things all of a sudden take a turn towards peace. And all of a sudden, there you are. Wars stop. People become peaceful. People get on. And so it is that you are the one that's creating it all. And we are not trying to dodge your question here, Sherry. We are just trying to say it is you that has the control of that, you see. What do you want to see in your world? If you move up the scale from joy to ecstasy, what do you want to see around you? How would you like to experience it? Go to that place, be there, hang out there, and guess what? That's the world you will step into. So,
Any response, Sherry, that you want to type in there?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you
we can. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, that helps tremendously. It's what I'm working with right now, and it's kind of, hearing it over and over and asking it in different ways help solidify it. And I'm beginning to see those changes happening as I'm changing my focus.
Of course.
So it's very, very good to keep hearing that message, because it's so different than what you have lived from before as you're making these changes. So that is very helpful.
Yes. This concept of a multiple versions of the world is a big one, is it not, to grasp when you've spent your whole life expecting that there's one version of the world and you're living with it and dealing with it. And and we understand that it's a big change, but unless you can come to that understanding, then the law of attraction is nonsense, you see. Because if you, Sherry, can, by law of attraction, have the world be any way you want it to be, and we promise you can, that is the law of attraction. And anybody else in the world, this one, can have the world the way he wants it to be, and his ideas about the way he wants it to be are different than your ideas about the way you want it to be. Then how can it be that he can get his way and you can get your way? You see, it doesn't work, does it?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we are just saying, yes, it's a radical concept that there are multiple versions of the world, and yet it is a simple concept in a sense. We know it flies in the face of a lot of practiced thinking, and certainly it flies in the face of all the practical advice that seems to be hanging out there in this planet that this one exists in, and probably the one that you exist in. And yet, it is the truth of it. And once you get it, you get it. And yes, it may take a bit of reminding and a bit of rethinking and a bit of reminding yourself, and we're here to remind you and remind you and remind you for as many times as you want.
Yes, and I have had some success with this in that by being on these calls and listening in since November, I was able to see my mother differently, from being an active alcoholic to being healed from that. And she is healed from it, because that's the way I see her now.
Yes, exactly. And it's fun to, once you understand you have your hand on the steering wheel here, you see, it's fun to begin to turn those corners, is it not?
Yes.
And that's the fun of it all. That is really why you are here. Once you get that understanding and you see where it is that you want to go, and all of a sudden you are there, oh, that's fun. That is real fun.
Yes.
Yes, good.
It's joy. Joy, joy, joy.
Absolutely, yes.
And by the way, Sherry, just talking about myself, I still need hundreds and thousands of reminders. So on it goes.
Yeah.
And this one also, we promise you.
Julie made a comment. Oh, go ahead, Tara.
I was just going to say here that for those of you that channel, you know that when you are channeling, very often, more often, almost always, we would say always, you are talking to yourself as well as you are talking to those who are listening.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I wanted to read Julie's comment. She said, I want to share that I was at the grocery store this week, and I looked down and found a $20 bill just lying there. I had been thinking how fun it would be to receive money, and I just thought it was so fun and so cool. Just wanted to share. And this is from Julie, a.k.a. the Money Finder.
Yes, and as we said, that is the fun of it, is it not? It is being able to find that treasure that you have created for yourself. And we would say, what did you think when you found that money, Julie? And if your thoughts were, oh, this is fun, I thought about creating money and here it is, and if I can do this, what more can I do? You see, you can grow from there. Another person finding that money would say, oh, I was just lucky today. And what about the poor person that lost that? Maybe they're worse off than I am. Now I'm starting to feel bad for them. And you can see where that track takes you, can you not? And so it really is all about how you think of these things. This is your world. And so Be aware, as we said, of how you're thinking. Be aware of how you feel. Allow yourself to enter into these things without reservation. Allow yourself to play with the mind of a 3-year-old.
And she says, my husband asked me if I tried turning it in, and I laughed and said, heck no, that never occurred.
Of course not.
That is great. Bringing up my grandson again one more time. I'll probably do it many more times. But it just occurred to me, that's what he's doing all the time. He's finding this and finding that and discovering things, imagining things, and things are showing up for him all the time. All the time. So when Julie says she found a $20 bill, or for me, if I find some little thing or I manifest some little thing, my gosh, the little ones are doing it constantly. They're doing it constantly. So what a reminder for us that that's how we're supposed to be doing it, or that's our
Yes.
our joy.
Yes. Without reservation, of course.
Yes.
Yes. And so if you find Julie a packet of $10,000, what's the right thing to do? To report it as being found because some poor needy person might have lost it? And the answer is, there is no poor needy person out there that lost this unless you create that poor needy person and the need to give it to them. Can you see? It's all how you perceive this reality of yours. It's all how you approach it. We have said to you before, you can choose to rob banks for a living if you want to. Now, we don't encourage you to go out and break laws, because you probably would have the expectation of being caught and evil things happening to you. But we are saying there's nothing right or wrong about any course of action. There's only what you choose to think about it. And that's not being irresponsible. That's being truthful about who you are. Once again, it is understanding the nature of who you are rather than dealing with the way the world describes you. That's how powerful you are. That's what your thought is all about.
So she says, keep it, enjoy, and then she says, no, I knew it was a gift from me to me. And Sherry says, see everyone with $10,000.
Of course.
So there you go.
Of course.
All right, do we have any more questions or comments? If not, perhaps it's time to wrap up, Tara.
Yes, well, we think we have wrapped up in many senses here, but we appreciate the opportunity to be with you, and this one appreciates the opportunity to focus in this way because it's fun for him, and through him we have expressed many things, but we express our appreciation now of you and the little games that you are playing and the big games that you are playing, and the ways in which we can interact together. If you have anything to ask us, you have but to ask. We are here. You have but to reach out and ask. And so, for now, we are complete.
Thank you, Robin and Tara, and thank you, everybody, for your wonderful questions and comments. It was such a rich call, and you make it that way. So thank you for being here, and much love.
Absolutely. So thanks, everybody, and we'll catch up with you next week or whenever. It's fun to be with you all. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.